All right, coming to you live from Austin, Texas and DockerCon. I'm here with Scott, McCarty, and Jag. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, thank you. Good.
And so you're both at Red Hat, and you have sort of similar but different roles. So we'll start with Jag. What do you do?
So I'm the chief software architect for Ansible. Ansible's an IT automation startup that Red Hat acquired, I guess, about a year and a half ago. And so Ansible's sort of becoming the de facto language of IT automation. This has become of interest lately, particularly as people are building out this containerized ecosystem where we all talk about serverless, but the first step in going serverless is to buy a server. And so once you have
the irony.
Once you have the server and have the platform on which you want to run this serverless architecture, you really need something to configure and maintain and provision and secure it. And that's something that folks are really still leaning on Ansible a lot to do.
Cool. And we'll get back and double click, but let's turn to Scott. What do you do?
So I am a senior strategist for containers, so I focus on our solutions across all the products, basically. So everything from OpenShift to some of the Ansible pieces, parts, to the RHEL, deep kernel pieces of containers, and everything in between, basically.
So you guys pivoted on the OpenShift side about, 2 years ago? Because you had your own sort of container format. I forget what those were called.
They were called gears.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, it was before Docker existed, so it was actually much longer than 2 years ago.
Okay. And so then,
it was more like 4.
Okay, so when did you switch over to containers? And I know Kubernetes plays big in the mix. And
So this is a tough one. I have to go a little bit technical, but those were technically containers also. Really, the difference now is that we use the OCI format, so the Open Container Initiative format. The actual running containers aren't terribly different. There's C groups, SE Linux, and Linux namespaces. Although at the time, I think we were using shroots instead of namespaces, but very similar. Just Linux kernel technologies to create the containers. But we had our own format.
And so where is OpenShift now? Are you on 3.0 was a year ago, a year and a half ago? What are you up to now?
3.5 just released.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And what's the new secret sauce in that?
Following Kubernetes 1.5, it's refinement in a lot of ways. I mean, it's really about, it's more than just running the containers, it's building the containers, it's the self-service portals, it's managing, storage and dynamic provisioning of storage and, essentially dynamic, life cycle of the applications and all the supporting pieces, parts, not just the containers, also the storage and networking and all the other things.
Cool. So Jag, Ansible, right? So it fell into the category of the puppet, the chef, the salts, and now I'm guessing there's got to be a lot of the advantages is that you're more integrated into a larger whole. So how is that, and how are you integrated?
Well, so definitely Ansible gets put, lumped into the same spaces like the puppets and the chefs and the salts. One of the key differentiators that I think puts us a little bit outside that is that Ansible is an agentless technology. So since we rely upon existing transports in order to talk to the devices that we're configuring, we really have the freedom to talk to a lot more kinds of devices and talk to containers, talk to devices that don't fit neatly into the categories of hosts. But since the merger with Red Hat, it's really opened up a lot of opportunities for us in terms of not only integrating with the existing Red Hat portfolio, but bringing some of the expertise and some of the low-level knowledge about systems and networks and real-world customer experiences that have made our work with Ansible and Ansible Tower better, to have better customer success, to solve their problems more easily. And so we're sort of just bridging the horizon in Ansible with the container space. Literally a year ago at DockerCon last year, we introduced a new project called Ansible Container. We ran into the story a lot that folks had an investment in Ansible content. They'd written a lot of playbooks, written a lot of roles, which were fantastic for provisioning bare metal and VMs, but now they wanted to get into the container space and suddenly had to throw away all their Ansible and go back and write a Docker file, which at the end of the day is really just a shell script. So we tried to come up with a way that people could re-leverage their existing Ansible content in order to get into the container space, to work with their development environment in that regard, and then ultimately re-leverage that same work in order to get into a production container platform like OpenShift, like Kubernetes.
Yeah, and one thing I would add, so if you think about the path from bare metal to VM was just about managing a kernel in a user space, right? And a lot of the configuration management is about managing the user space content and changing files around because everything's a file in Linux. If you move into containers and the Open Container Initiative images, right, or the Docker images that a lot of people call them, it's really just about modifying what's in that user space, and so Ansible's already really good at that. So it's a great place to leverage knowledge and understanding that you already have to modify what's in that user space, and then save that, and then move that around as a unit of deployment.
Cool. So just quick last question. Where do you see Red Hat in a year as far as containers, Ansible, blah, 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 OpenShift?
I think that the name of the game, as far as Ansible and Red Hat both, is that the open foundation of the Red Hat way means that we have a lot of different endpoints. We have a lot of different ways to get our customers from the problems they have to the solutions they need. And so I think, particularly as the container ecosystem becomes more mature, you'll see the influence that Red Hat has had as the top upstream contributor to Docker, top upstream contributor to Kubernetes, in creating a richer landscape of open solutions that our customers can ultimately get to.
Cool. And Scott, what would you point to?
Well, I think a place to look for is there's a lot of exciting work that's happening right now in the storage, around the storage and dynamic provisioning. But also, I'd say, like, looking a year ahead, look around the Courier project and networking and kind of where we get with the dynamicness of being able to provision and control networks. So I think that's going to be exciting. Yeah, I think that's going to be exciting.
Very cool. Scott, Jack, thanks so much.
Thanks.